Now, I want to bring this to your attention, Ikhwani, because it's really important. Some of us from our shabab, we want to be people who want to drink from the yambur, from the fountain and the mishkat of authenticity. We're not interested in the Islam of people's culture, whether they're Somali, whether they're Algerian, Moroccan, whether they come from Gambia, whether they come from Ghana, Senegal, whether they come from Mecca, Syria, Jordan, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. With all due respect to your cultures, I don't want Islam of the culture, where the culture has taken over al-Islam and the people are practicing culture in the place of the deen. We're not against anyone's culture, as long as the culture doesn't go against the religion. As a Muslim revert, I don't have to take your culture, but if I was in your environment, while I'm dealing with you, I'll respect it, I'll take it into consideration. But when your culture has been passed off as the religion, and the religion is against your culture in that particular thing, we're not interested in that. We're not interested in that at all, at all. We want to be people who our hearts want pure Islam, real Islam. But in trying to obtain that reality, some of us, due to our lack of knowledge, due to our youthful exuberance, due to our ignorance, and sometimes due to our lack of ikhlas even, some of us, in going about expressing ourselves in that way, we make some serious mistakes. We become haughty and become pumped up, and we become a group of people who say, how is it that sheikh used the weak hadith? What is wrong with Al-Imam al-Nawawi? Does he know that the Prophet didn't say that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And he exists like that. Does the revert only have a monopoly on that mentality and that mistake? Kalla wallahi. Some of the brothers who are born and raised in Islam, but they came back to Islam, or they found pure Islam. Their parents are in cultural Islam, but they want real Islam. Some of them make this mistake. People want to be on the haqq. And we have this thing where I don't want the weak hadith. Allah Ta'ala said in the Quran, قُلْ مَاذَا بَعْدَ الْحَقِّ إِلَى الضَّلَالِ. What is there after the truth except falsehood? You have the truth and then you have falsehood. There's no in between. You can't mix and mesh. قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقِّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. Tell them, Muhammad, the truth has come and falsehood has disappeared, because falsehood is an ever-fleeing thing. When the haqq comes, it knocks the brains out of falsehood. They can't coexist. So if you have knowledge of the religion and you're dealing with people who don't have knowledge of the religion, just take it easy and deal with them with your proofs. Don't give them a reason to reject the haqq because you're too rough, too tough, or, the smoke screens that people make. The truth and darkness cannot coexist. That light being on, it prevents the darkness from being in here. As long as that light is on. You turn that light off, then the darkness is going to come. So the scholars of Islam, Ikhwani, they used to put these ahadith in their books for different reasons. I'm not going to get into all of that, but what I will say is this. Some of the youngsters, some of the younger brothers, when we were studying, we see this, a vicious cycle. It goes over and over and over again. It continually happens. Recidivism in it. It's an ever-revolving door. It keeps happening. Back in Al-Medina, one of the ulama who used to teach us Kitab al-Tawheed and the Sunnah of Imam Abu Dawood. His name is Sheikh Abdullah bin Muhammad al-Ghunayman, hafidhahullah ta'ala. He taught in the Prophet's Masjid sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When he read Kitab al-Tawheed, he would come to a hadith that we knew those hadith were weak, and he would explain them although they were weak. When he was doing the Sunnah of Imam Abu Dawood in hadith, he would come to hadith that were clearly weak. We knew they were weak. He would say they were weak, but he would explain those hadith. And some of the students were saying, well, Sheikh, why do you explain the weak hadith and the Prophet didn't say it? And they were tough. They did that recently in the last few months to one of the Kibar ulama in Saudi Arabia. And I wanted to make this very clear to my students again. The only ulama are not the ulama of Saudi Arabia. When we read these texts and things that people are saying, don't be of the people and watch the people who say, we have our own scholars. You don't have to listen to the scholars. We don't have to turn our affairs to the scholars. Some people, when they hear that, we have to turn our fears to the scholars. That doesn't mean, we accept that, but that doesn't mean only Saudi Arabia. There are ulama in Somalia, there are ulama in Senegal, there are ulama in Egypt, there are ulama in Jordan, there are ulama in Syria, there are ulama in Morocco, there are ulama in Aljazair, there are ulama all over the world. Some people want to make Saudi Arabia have the monopoly on scholastic aptitude, although we honor, love, and respect those ulama in Saudi Arabia. But don't put us in that hole. As it relates to the issue here, now, we're dealing with, people would say, hey, why is the sheikh wasting our time? He should just jump over that hadith because it's weak. And the Prophet didn't say it as if you're better than the sheikh. Your ghira for the haqq is more than the sheikh. No, ya akhi. This is what the scholars used to do in the past. They put these hadith in those books, and when they explain those hadith, they explain those weak hadith. Like Al-Imam Ibn Rajab Al-Hanbali rahmatullahi alayhi. He has a book in which explains the 40 hadith of Al-Imam An-Nawawi, and I advise you guys to get that book. That is one of the best, most scholastic, put together translations that I've ever seen in English. The brother from America who was originally from Spain, Jamil Zaragoza, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, translated that book a long time ago. You don't hear about him a lot now, but him putting that book's translation into the dunya in the scales with Yawm al-Qiyamah with Allah, Allah knows best what reward he's going to get. That's a book you have to have in your library as a serious student of knowledge. Al-Imam Ibn Rajab explained all of those hadith. When he came to the weak hadith in Al-Imam An-Nawawi's 40 hadith, he didn't skip over them. He explained them. He explained them. He said in one of the hadith of Sahl ibn Sa'd al-Sa'idi radiyallahu anhu, where he said that the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they said that the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, izhad fi dunya yuhibbukullah, wazhad fima inda nas yuhibbuk nas. Have zuhd in the dunya and Allah will love you. Have zuhd. Don't pay attention with what people own. Oh, look at his car. Look where he lives. Look at his iPhone. Look at it. You know how you look at people on TV. They always are showing us people in their property, cribs. What's that about my ride? What is it called again? Pump my ride. Pimp my ride. And we look there and we say, wow, wish I had that. Wish I had that. That hadith said, don't worry about what people have. And other people will love you. Because you won't be a person who has hasad. You won't be hasid, haqid. Al-Imam Ibn Rajab, when he came to that hadith, Al-Imam An-Nawawi said the hadith is hasan. It's authentic. And he said, who said it was hasan? Al-Imam Ibn Rajab, he said, فَأَمَّا تَحْسِينَ هَذَا الْحَدِيث فَبَعِيدٌ جِدًّا. This hadith being hasan is far away. That's not true. Very far away. But he went on to explain the hadith and the benefits of the hadith and the meaning of the hadith, although the Prophet didn't say it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other hadith as well in 40 hadith of Al-Imam An-Nawawi. Probably this hadith would not be known and it wouldn't be ma'ruf in the dunya had it not been for Al-Imam An-Nawawi's book. All of you know the hadith. لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به. None of you truly believes until your desires are in tune and harmony with what I brought. Al-Imam Al-Dhahabi, Al-Imam An-Nawawi said that hadith is sahih. Al-Imam Ibn Rajab, and he came in his book, Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam, and he said, وَأَمَّا تَصْحِيحَ هَذَا الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ بَعِيدٌ جِدًّا. As for this hadith being sahih, that's very far away. That's not true. And then he went on and he explained those hadith. So now the question is, not only Al-Imam Al-Dhahabi, those scholars who explain the Kutub al-Sitta, the 4 books, Abu Dawud, Al-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, and Nasa'i. Abu Dawud, Al-Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, Ibn Majah. They have weak hadith. Those scholars who came and explained those books, they explained those weak hadith. So as students of knowledge who respect the scholars of Islam, never allow yourself to be against the tariqah of the ulama of Islam. Those scholars of Islam, they wrote 40 hadith books all day long. They're all over the place. They filled up the dunya with these 40 hadith books. Don't you come and say, that hadith is weak. What were the scholars thinking about? They should be like me. No. And these hadith or 40 hadith, these books, they have weak hadith. What were those scholars thinking about? Hey, you relax yourself. You relax yourself. Because clearly one of the quickest roads to destruction is, again, as I mentioned to you many times, being impressed with yourself. Those people were destroyed because they are ghurur in the religion. Now, what are some of the reasons why those scholars wrote these books of 40 hadith? There are many, many, many reasons. I'm only going to deal with one today because it's quite interesting. Because all of the reasons, they can be criticized, all of them. You can get your head around some of them, but each and every one of them can be criticized. But one of the reasons, if you were asked, why did the scholars write books 40 hadith? If the hadith is weak, why would they write a book? Why would they write a book about 40 hadith of this? Scholars gave many, many reasons for that. One I want to bring to your attention, I find it quite interesting, is because the number 40 has a special place in Islam. It has a special place in the Quran and in the Sunnah. And as I said, the scholars of Islam, Ikhwani, never left any stone unturned. They turned everything over. You want to know something about your deen, your dunya? You're going to find ulama who you can ask. Don't go to young people. The young people who are extreme and radical. The young people who are passing off fatwas based upon their emotions. Don't go to people like that. The young revert from America, he's African American. For an example, he's from here, Afro-Caribbean. He accepts Islam and he's on the Sunnah, and he wants the Sunnah. He's from America and he knows the evil of the racism of America. He knows that evil. Our people are getting shot and killed, so America shouldn't come talking about democracy and talking about Islam being barbaric and all that stuff, because they're still oppressing our people. So that individual, one of the reasons why he comes to Al-Islam is because of the racism that he found in Christianity has been dealt with in Al-Islam. The Quran and the Sunnah. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That's in his deen. The Prophet ﷺ effectively showed people there is no virtue of the Arab over the non-Arab, the white over the black. He raised up those companions who were of color, and they were famous for being of color and being non-Arabs, like Salman al-Farisi and Suhaib al-Rumi and Bilal ibn Rabah and other than them. May Allah be pleased with them. So he comes to the religion and he knows Islam is the truth. And one of the ways he knows is from this bad. He comes to the masjid of a group of people from Somalia, a group of people from Jordan, a group of people from Morocco or Pakistan. And in that masjid, they have an imam who's hafiz of the Quran. And behind that hafiz, when they pray, is 2 or 3 spaces saved for the hufaz. It's only for the hufaz. It's not for any Amr, Bakr and Zayd. It's not for you, it's not for me. So that if the imam makes a mistake, they can open up for him and correct him. If the imam loses his wudu, they get in front of the people and complete the salah. So this new young revert brother who has some of the truth with him, he comes to the masjid before the prayer and he stands right before the imam, right behind the imam. The people say, Ya akhi, don't stand there. That place has been reserved. He said, reserved? Reserved? No reservation in Islam. This is Allah's house. We're all equal in Islam. The black and the white. And Prophet Muhammad said, don't you? And he goes through all of that. The people say, yeah, we know that. But that's for the hufaz. He doesn't know, that revert brother. What he's saying is true in its context and in another place. But the Prophet ﷺ used to tell the companions, let those people pray behind me who memorize the Quran, who are the nuha, and the people who are older, the ulama, the fuqaha. So right now, we're not equal. As the Quran said, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. So are they equal, those who know and those who don't know? They're not equal. So when you find this space being reserved, you can't get in that space. As for someone put a hat over there, someone put a hat over there, they shouldn't do that. But even there, you shouldn't come in like a gangster and a thug and kick the man's hat over. He's an old man, he's saving that chair, and you come push it over. That's the place he prays in. Respect the mentality of the old sheikh, the uncle. But he shouldn't do that because it's a prohibition that Allah Ta'ala, He is not happy with the one who reserves a place the way the camel does. If a camel comes in a place and he sits down, he'll always go to that place. It becomes his. So the Prophet didn't want us to pray in the same place. Pray here, pray there, pray there, pray here, pray there, so that all of these spaces will bear witness on you for you Yawm al-Qiyamah. But behind the Imam, you can reserve that place. Now that new reaver, that young brother, what he's saying and what he's having in his mind is true to a degree, but he doesn't have the full picture. And I give you that example that you all can relate to. His example is like the example of the other young one. Al-jihad, al-jihad. Al-khilafah, al-khilafah. We have to do jihad and khilafah. And his youthful exuberance. What he's saying is true in a context, but not in the context of us living here in Birmingham. Not in the context of us living in America. What he wants to do and how he's behaving is going to destroy Islam, destroy himself, destroy the community. And if you young people have not taken pages out of the history of people who we know in this country, then you need to wake up and smell the coffee, because we have too many real examples. I'm not telling you to go back in a book and read about it. These are personalities we know, people on the roofs and things like that. That dawah leads to destruction. It doesn't lead to building anything. So that youthful exuberance, that what we're addressing here. Why is the Sheikh talking about the weak hadith? Why is the Sheikh explaining weak? You have to relax yourself, humble yourself, and get in knowledge. Take the time out to accuse and to make the tuhma of your understanding and your own level of comprehension.